Hi, I'm Christy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here to let you know exactly what I ended up giving all of my 2024 5-star predictions for the year. Alright, so I believe that I had 20 on my 5-star predictions list that I did for the 2024 new releases for the year. And so I did that video a year ago now, and so I'm excited to see what I thought about all of those books. Alright, so I'm going to pull up my notes and check my video from last year that I did around this time. So I believe I did 20 on the list of 5-star predictions of 2024 new releases that I was excited to get to. A lot of these were favorite authors, or all of them I guess were favorite authors that I thought their books would be 5 stars for me. All of these authors are ones I've read before, so like I had high hopes for their books, and so I'm going to just quickly run down the list and let you know what I actually ended up giving all of those books. So I'm going to watch that video and compile a list of all of the ones that I read, so I will link the video in the description of this video as well if you want to go back and see all of my hopes and dreams for all of these 2024 new releases and kind of my thoughts on all of them before I went into them. So I'll link that video below, and then we're just going to quickly kind of recap all of them, and I'll let you know what I thought about all of those books. Of course, as always, if you ever want to see more of my thoughts or my full reviews on any of the books that I'm about to talk about, any of the books that I ever read, I do review every book that I read, and you can always get to my reviews in my Goodreads, which is always linked in the description of all of my videos. I also do link every book and author that I talk about in all of my videos, so if you ever want to see that, they're always in the description notes of all of my videos. That way, if you missed one and you want to go back and see what I was talking about, they're all down there as well. So we're going to quickly just get into these, and I had them kind of broken up by a month of when they released. So first up in January was Loving Romeo by Laura Pavlov. So this cover is a special edition that Laura did at book signings this year. I am obsessed with the gold and the black, and then we just kind of have the black and gold motif on the back as well and on the spine of this book. So if you can't tell, I mean, I grabbed a special edition of it. This one I did end up loving, and I gave it 5 stars. This is the first book in Laura Pavlov's Magnolia Falls series, which is a small town series, and we're kind of following this group of guy friends who are very much like a found family. And this was the first book in the Magnolia Falls series. It came out in January of 2024. The entire series actually ended up releasing in 2024, which is amazing for her. I read them all, love the series so much, but we're just going to talk about Loving Romeo. This one has opposites attract. Basically in here, the hero was a famous boxer, and he has now since retired and stepped away from that, but he's kind of being taunted and teased and kind of getting called back in to join a match again. And so very much like Rocky vibes, which if you watch that entire movie series, you will know what I mean. I love the Rocky franchise, and I know that Laura does as well. So this book in particular has a lot of really fun nods and moments to the Rocky franchise, which I just love when authors do that. So anyways, the hero Romeo in here was a former boxer, and he's since retired, and now he owns a gym in their small town in Magnolia Falls. So the heroine ends up coming back into town, and so basically her family is kind of like the small town royalty there. Like they own a lot of businesses, they're very wealthy, and everybody like loves their family. But the hero and his friends who are like his family, they definitely have some issues with the heroine and her family, and so they kind of take it out on her as well. So anyways, she ends up coming back into town. She ends up opening a business right next door to his gym, and she has this coffee shop, and so she lives above the coffee shop as well. And so one of the nights he ends up seeing her and seeing that she's in a little bit of trouble, so he steps in to help her, and then it kind of goes from there. I really enjoyed this one. I love that like opposites attract, kind of from the wrong side of the tracks, so to speak. Really loved this one. A great intro to the series. So this one was a 5-star for me, so I'm off to a good start with my predictions. All right, next up, this was like the end of January. I want to say like January 30th this book released. So this is House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. This is book 3 in her Crescent City series, which is an urban fantasy romance series. I love this series. I love Sarah J. Maas, so no surprise I gave it 5 stars. I love this book. I actually ended up reading it twice this year. It is a chunky book. I went through and annotated it because I love this book and this series so much, so you can see a lot of my annotations, and I won't show too many because I have a lot of notes in here for like kind of spoilers for the series, spoilers for other Sarah J. Maas things, but I'm just obsessed with how this came out, and I love it so much. I honestly don't know if I can show anything from my notes that isn't like spoilery. I'll do like a quick look through just because I have a lot of notes and things in here, and there are some spoilers, so I don't want to show too much. So yeah, I mean, look at these, look at the tabs. I love them so much. They all have different meanings, which I love. And so anyways, I love this book to pieces. If you can't tell, this book put me in a massive book slump at the end of January when I first finished it. And then I had to read it again in February because I was just, couldn't read anything else. Nothing else I could think about. So I had to pick the book up again. I love this book so much. Can't say too much about it because like I said, it's a 3rd book, continuation of a series, and it's really hard to talk about it because it's just building upon each other. So yeah, urban fantasy romance series, and it's just everything to me. I'm a massive SJM fan, so I love her books. I could talk about them for years and never get tired of it. So yeah, House of Flame and Shadow was definitely a 5-star for me. This is my favorite book of the year. Loved it so much. All right, next up, I don't have a copy of this one because I didn't love it. So this is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This one was just such a massive miss for me, and I feel like this book has definitely gotten a lot of hit and miss reviews from a lot of people this year. I know people who love this book. Some of my friends love this book, so I'm really glad that it worked for a lot of people. For me, though, it just was a massive miss. So like I said, I gave this one 2 stars. This one, it sounded so good. I have read every single one of Ali Hazelwood's books, all of her novellas, all of her like audio kind of just editions as well. I was just really excited for this book, being a massive paranormal romance fan as well, and it was just so disappointing and lackluster. And I've just read so many better like paranormals in my life, so I don't know, this one was just a miss for me. Ali Hazelwood and I kind of are hit and miss in general, but I have enjoyed and given a couple of her books 5 stars, so I had high hopes for this one. This one's basically kind of like an arranged setup between the heroine. She is from a vampire clan and the hero is an alpha werewolf, and so they end up having to have this alliance to kind of keep the peace and all the things. There's some other things going on. I just wanted more of the couple on page together because I feel like they were just separated for a lot of it, and I felt like the world, the paranormal world, was just very lackluster. Like I said, I've read better, so this one was just a massive miss for me, 2 stars. All right, next up is Ashes of You by Catherine Cowles. So this is a gorgeous cloth-bound special edition that Catherine had and sold earlier this year. I love the gold on here and the beautiful edges, and then the back as well with the little like gold moments. These are just absolutely stunners. The interiors, they're all different for each book. They have the ribbon bookmark. They are just stunning editions. She signed all of them. Love this book to pieces if you can't tell. I gave this book 5 stars. So this is the 5th and final book in her Lost and Found series, which is a small town romantic suspense series. This is actually one of my favorites in the series. I think it's probably my 2nd or 3rd favorite in that range. I love so many in the series so much. This one's just so good. We have small town romantic suspense. This one has age gap, a ton of protective vibes, not just from the hero, but from his 3 sons as well. So in here, basically, it is a single dad nanny romance as well. The heroine becomes the nanny for the hero. He is the chief of police in town, and he has 3 sons, and so she ends up becoming the nanny for them. And when she gets there, the hero and her actually have a connection to the past that you kind of see right from the beginning of the story in the prologue of kind of her tragic backstory and how their histories kind of connect. And so she ends up working for the hero. It's very slow burn because of the heroine's past and just kind of the situations going on. It's just, it's so good. If you love like protective vibes and you love single dad nanny, I highly recommend this book. It's so, so good. The slow burn, the romantic suspense elements, I love it so much. Like, this couple was definitely meant for one another. I love her connection with the hero's sons. So good. This whole series, highly recommend if you haven't checked out the Lost and Found series. I love this series to pieces. So yeah, Ashes of You was definitely another 5-star for me. All right, next up, I thought I had a copy of this book, and I might around here somewhere, but I couldn't find it. So this one is A Love Song for Ricky Wilde. This one I enjoyed and ended up giving it, I think, 3.5/4 stars. So a couple years ago, I had read 7 Days in June by this author, which I absolutely loved. It was one of my favorites, and so I had high hopes for this book as well, not really knowing too much about what it was going into it. So 7 Days in June is a contemporary romance, kind of straddles like the women's fiction line, but definitely more contemporary romance, while as A Love Song for Ricky Wilde has more of a kind of historical fiction, magical realism element to the story. So I will say, if like magical realism kind of isn't your jam, it probably won't work for some people or some readers, but I personally love magical realism in my books, and so I had a really good time with this one. This one is a slow burn though, really, really slow story. So again, I think that would kind of turn people away as well, but I really enjoyed this one, so I gave it 3.5/4 stars. Basically in here, we follow the heroine, Ricky Wilde, and she comes from this very like prominent, wealthy Atlanta family, and her family owns funeral homes, and Ricky has always been the kind of artistic one of the family. So she's never really fit in with her family, and so she decides to take off. She moves to New York. She ends up renting a brownstone in Harlem. She opens up a flower shop that she always dreamed about. And then one night while she's there, she ends up meeting this kind of mysterious man in a garden who's been watching her. And from there, you see how their lives kind of, they're never the same. Like, it kind of goes from there. This one, kind of the like magical realism of it all, it kind of gave me vibes of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. So I think if you enjoyed that book, maybe pick this one up as well. This one, I just loved the kind of star-crossed lovers aspect to it, seeing artists. I love seeing the celebration of Black art and history and kind of how it's set against the modern day Harlem as well as kind of the Harlem Renaissance glamour. So I enjoyed this one. It's definitely more of a different read than her previous book, so I enjoyed it. 3.5/4 stars for me. All right, next up was Ready or Not by Cara. So I have read all of this author's books, all of her like Audible originals, all of her things. I just consume her books and love them so much. So this book I did enjoy. I ended up giving it 4 stars. So this book is a brother's best friend, kind of friends to lovers, surprise accidental pregnancy setup, but it's where the baby is not the heroes. So basically in here, the heroine, you kind of see her life is a mess. Like her career is a mess, her apartment's a mess, her whole life. She doesn't have things figured out. And at the beginning of the story, she ends up having this one night stand with somebody at a bar. They have a good night. And then a little bit later, she realizes that she's pregnant from that one night stand situation. And so she's like, oh my God, my whole life is chaos. It's a mess. How am I going to handle having a baby? So you very much see her kind of realness and struggles with figuring out what she wants to do with her pregnancy, with her life, with the baby to be's father, like all of the kind of situations. It's very real and raw to like pregnancy and just kind of motherhood and things like that. At the same time, she has her best friend's brother who she actually grew up with as well. So it's kind of like friends to lovers situation as well. They're all really close. And so you see him, he is the ultimate cinnamon roll sweet hero. And he is just kind of in her life and wants to be there for her baby that she's going to be having, and just all the things. It's so stinking sweet and really just feels really raw and real. And so I really enjoyed this one. I know that a lot of people enjoyed it as well. So no surprise, this one was 4 stars for me. All right, next up was In Want of a Viscount by Lorraine Heath. So this was a February release and I love this one. I gave it 5 stars. Lorraine Heath is one of my historical romance queens. I have read majority of her historical romance backlist. I just love her books to pieces. This one really worked for me. It is more slow burn, but I just really loved the like romantic elements to the couple. So this book is in her Chessmen Masters of Scoundrels series, and so it's the last book I believe in that series. So this one, just like a lot of Lorraine Heath books, it has a lot of connections to other books in her Heathverse, her Lorraine Heath universe, and so a ton of her books and characters and places, they all connect. And so in here you definitely get a feel for that as well. The hero's backstory in this one does kind of relate to her Sins for All Seasons series, so I think if you've read that series you might have a better appreciation for the hero and his backstory at least. The heroine in here, she's an American heiress and she travels to London with her family to kind of get business investors, and the hero and his group of friends who are the chessmen, they are some of the investors that her and her family are kind of seeking business investments from. And so she ends up seeing the hero there and then realizing that they shared a night together, a previous night, like at kind of a ladies club where ladies are there to get whatever pleasures they want in life. And so the hero was there visiting a family member, and when he was there he was asked to go into the room where the heroine was and kind of do whatever she wanted. I think she just wanted a kiss, and so he ended up giving her a kiss. So they have a really good connection, and then those days later when they meet again during that business kind of investor meeting is when they realize they know one another already. I really enjoyed this one. The depth and emotion between the hero and the heroine really worked for me. The heroine is an inventor and kind of a tinkerer, so she kind of makes different things. She's messing around with typewriters. She really loves seeing how kind of engines and machinery works, and so she's always been looked at as kind of different, and nobody in like society understands or gets her. They think she's kind of odd. And so I loved in here how the hero totally understood her. He spoke her love language. He would like take her to places to go and see how like machinery, how Big Ben worked. It was just so stinking charming. The hero in here as well, he has a kind of backstory with his family in particular. His father was like an awful terrible man, which like I said, if you've read the Sins for All Seasons series, then you'll have a better appreciation for who his father is and what he's done and the hero's relationship with his father. And so in here, he kind of wanted to be the total opposite and never be like his father. So he has stayed away from women his whole life. And so now he is really pulled to the heroine, and it's just, ugh, it's so good. Very much like those sweepingly romantic vibes is what this book gave me. So slow burn, but like so romantic and good. Yeah, this was 5 stars for me. Next up, I read The Partner Plot by Christina Forrest. So this one was sadly a 2/2.5 star read for me. I was really sad because I loved the first book in the series. I read it last year. That was a 5-star book for me. And so I had high hopes for the rest of the series. Sadly, this one just didn't work for me. This one is a bit of a second chance. So basically in here, the heroine is a kind of fashion stylist. She has become famous and she works for famous people, kind of styling them and doing all of those things. And the hero is her ex, and he's also now a high school teacher, I want to say, at the high school that they graduated from. So basically in here, the heroine just got out of kind of a messy relationship situation, and it kind of involves her career as well. And she's in Vegas, and she ends up running into the hero who is there as well for business. So they end up kind of connecting and sharing the night together. And so then the next morning they wake up realizing that they have these wedding rings. And so they kind of freak out for a minute thinking that they got married, but they quickly realize they were part of this kind of like fake marriage ceremony situation that you could pay for just like a fake marriage in Vegas. And so they realize that really quickly into the book. And that was kind of one of my issues with the story. I thought it was going to be this kind of like married in Vegas, marriage of convenience, have to make it work. But it's kind of this thought we got married in Vegas. It was actually fake, but a fake marriage would kind of help out our situation, our careers. So let's pretend to be married. So it's a bit of like a fake relationship. And I don't know, it was just very lackluster for me, and it was just really long and took me forever to get through it. So yeah, I didn't love this one. 2.5 stars. Like I said, I loved the first book in the series though, The Neighbor Favor. Highly recommend that one. This one was just a miss for me. Maybe it was because of the tropes and the characters. I don't know. So I would still read more from this author in the future. I know she has the 3rd book in the series coming out in this coming year. And so I'll definitely get to it. It just probably won't be a 5-star prediction for myself again. All right, next up is This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan. So this, first of all, I love the pink on this like Barnes & Noble edition, the pink like floral on here. So this one is a follow-up to Before I Let Go. So this is the 2nd book in her Skyland series. So first of all, I love Before I Let Go so much. That was one of my favorite reads. I want to say of 2022. When it came out, I loved that book to pieces. It was so amazing, so good. It's still one of my favorite romances that I've read, and I just love that book. So I had high hopes for this book. I have loved so many of Kennedy Ryan's books. This one was sadly disappointing to me, but I feel like it was kind of the marketing of it all, and I kind of went in with different expectations than what the book was. So anyways, I gave this one 3.5 stars, and I feel like it was a very solid 3.5 for me. So this one, basically, I assumed it would be contemporary romance like Kennedy usually writes, and this one I would say is more women's fiction with a romantic subplot, like love story in there. So I feel like that just kind of affected my reading of the book, and I just had some issues with the pacing and the plot of it all. Basically in here, the heroine, we start off seeing her, she's a wife and she's a mom, and at the beginning of the story, her husband ends up getting arrested for some crimes that he committed, and so it definitely shakes up their entire family. Finances become frozen. She has to kind of figure out what she's gonna do to take care of herself and her daughters, because she's never had to really do any of that kind of like working and figuring things out on her own. And so they've lived a very lavish lifestyle, and now she has to kind of figure out how she's gonna make ends meet and figure it all out. So around the same time, the hero in here, he knows the heroine and meets her at kind of a work Christmas party when the story starts. Or I know it's a work party, maybe it's holiday themed, I want to say. And so basically in here they meet and they have this kind of connection, and then he realizes that she's the wife of the man that he's about to get arrested and fired. And so he's kind of like an accountant for the company. And so he finds some things about her husband's business dealings. So he's kind of involved in getting her husband in trouble, but also like he's just calling out the things that her husband was literally doing. So their relationship is a little bit forbidden because of that. And I felt like this book, which rightly so, it was more about the heroine, her story, her journey, everything she was going through. And I felt like some of the things that happened just happened a little too quickly, a little too easily. I wanted like some time given, maybe for the heroine, like a flash forward a couple years later. Some of the stuff towards the end of the book would have been a little bit more believable for me of what she accomplished in such a short time. And the hero, I love him to pieces. He is a single dad as well. He co-parents with his ex-wife, and I just loved the hero so much. I just wanted more of him in the heroine's life, so I wanted more of them together because he was amazing. I just feel like we didn't get to see a ton of them together. So yeah, I loved the hero in here. He is a father to 2 autistic sons with his ex, and I just really love seeing him in the story, so I wanted more of them on page and their romance because it was just so good. They're such good characters, but I wanted a little bit more, and I was a little disappointed with kind of the execution of the story. So yeah, like a solid 3.5 for me. Again, I love Kennedy Ryan's books in general, and so maybe going forward now, I'll just know what to expect, that maybe her writing style has changed, and that's fine. And so yeah, anyways, I love her books. We'll always shout about her books because I think they're so amazing. But yeah, Before I Let Go was definitely my favorite in this series so far. Next up is The Wickedness of a Highlander by Alisa Braden. So this is the 4th book in her Midnight in Scotland series. So this is an indie historical romance series. I love Alisa Braden's books. I have read all of her books, love them so much, and this one was like highly anticipated. The release date for this one got pushed back so long, like people were waiting for this book, I want to say like a year or 2, and then once it had a release date, it got pushed back like another month, another month, another month, like 4 months later it finally came out. And so this one I did enjoy. I gave it 4 stars. Alisa Braden's books, I feel like they are best read in order. So this is the Midnight in Scotland series. It's book 4, which is a spinoff from her Rescued from Ruin series. So you see a lot of the same characters, families, kind of all of these things, they build upon each other. The Midnight Scotland series in particular, I feel like it's best read in order, especially this book. The heroine in here, she ends up trying to apologize for some things that her brother did in a previous book in the series. And so she wants to kind of go make amends to one of the families that he affected, and so she ends up going there, and the hero is the only one there at the time, and he is the one who hates the heroine, or so she thinks. So it kind of goes from there. He is a grumpy Scotsman, and I just really love Alisa Braden's writing, and her Highlander romances are just so good. good. I think I actually prefer the Rescued from Ruin series more, but this series as a whole is just so solid. So yeah, 4 stars for this one. I really enjoyed it. And I'm so glad that it finally released this year. Next up is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I love all of her books. I've read them all and have such a good time with her books. I think they've all been 4 or 5 stars for me. This book in particular was 4 stars as well. I will say after the previous year and reading Yours Truly by this author, which is one of my favorite books, it was one of my favorites of 2023, this book just didn't live up to that for me, so that's why I gave it 4 stars. But again, it's so solid, it's so good. I would highly recommend this book and this author, honestly, to anyone wanting to pick up some contemporary romances. So this one has a really fun setup. Basically in here, the hero and the heroine, they end up meeting on this kind of like Reddit thread where the heroine is talking about how everybody that she gets in a relationship with or dates, that person breaks up with her and goes on to find their love of their lives, their soulmate, whatever you want to say. And so the hero, he's on there as well and realizes that he's had the exact same problem. And so they end up writing back and forth and decide, you know what, we should date each other and then break up so that we can go and find our like one true love soulmate. And so they end up kind of chatting a lot, and I love their like conversations back and forth. The heroine is a travel nurse, and so she ends up deciding, you know what, maybe I should go pick the location of where the hero lives and kind of go and like give this a chance and maybe talk to him. And so I loved their like communication back and forth before they even meet. And then I love when they meet in person as well. The heroine here is just the sweetest. I feel like Abby Jimenez writes heroes so well. The heroine in here has some struggles with her kind of family relationships and situations, which that was kind of like a little bit of the part of the book that I wasn't as interested in. But overall, I really enjoyed this book. 4 stars. Highly recommend her books in general. All right, next up was Wild Love by Elsie Silver. So as you can see, I don't have a copy of this book. I didn't love this book, sadly. So this book I ended up giving 3 stars. This one was very disappointing for me, and I feel like kind of Elsie Silver and I have kind of ebbs and flows. Like we're very hit and miss. So like some of her books I ended up loving, giving 5 stars. I mean, Heartless, A Photo Finish, so many good books. But then there's a lot of books in her series as well that I don't always connect with. So like Flawless, The Front Runner, just some of those books. Those are some of the ones that don't work for me. So I feel like we're kind of hit and miss. And I feel like the first books in her series really don't work for me. Like Flawless, I did not love that book, but I'm so glad I continued on to Heartless. So I kind of like, I might continue on with this series because I haven't yet, but like, I don't know, we'll see. So this one I ended up giving 3 stars to. This one is a billionaire small town romance, kind of brother's best friend. The hero falls first. The hero in here as well, he ends up sort of becoming a single dad. Basically in here, a 12-year-old like shows up at his doorstep one day and is like, hey, you're my sperm donor and I want to come live with you. And so it kind of goes from there. Somebody else kind of mentioned after I read this book, I saw somebody else's review or multiple people's reviews saying this kind of gave them the whole like Luke and April storyline plotline from Gilmore Girls, which if you've seen the show and know, then that's exactly kind of how the plot felt in this one. And I didn't love it. So that's my thoughts on that one. This one just, yeah, it was disappointing for me, but I know so many people love this book, love this series, love Elsie Silver. I do love majority of her books. There's just going to be some like hit and misses for me. I have heard book 2 is better, so maybe I'll continue on. We'll see. But yeah, this one was 3 stars. So next up is Forbidden Game by Madison Fox. So this is the second book in her System series. The first book was A Good Game, which I really loved the previous year, and so I had high hopes for this book as well. This one, it was okay for me, but it wasn't on the same level as Good Game was. So this one I ended up giving 3.5/4 stars. Basically in this series, we're following video game streamers and players. And so in the first book in the series, they're all masked video game streamers. And now with this book, they are no longer like, they don't wear their masks anymore, but they're still very popular video game streamers. And so the heroine in here is the publicist for the team and so for the hero as well. And so she lives in the same building as them. She's very much involved in their daily lives and their schedules, and there's just always a lot of forced proximity together. And so that is kind of the setup for this book. The hero in here, he is British and he's from a very wealthy family. And basically his family's like, you need to come back and just be the heir to the family business instead of like messing around with these video games. And so he kind of struggles with that in the book of like what he wants to do with his life. And so it was good. It was fun. It just kind of felt like it wasn't on the same level as Good Game for me. So yeah, still and really enjoyed it. It's just not a favorite. So yeah, 3.5/4 stars. Next up is The Dixon Rule by Elle Kennedy. So this is the second book in her Campus Diaries series, which is kind of a spin-off, second gen, new generation of stories from her off-campus and Briar U worlds and characters. And so I've been really loving this series. This one in particular, I gave 4 stars to. So this one is a sports romance. There's also forced proximity. They live in the same building. They're neighbors. And here we have fake dating as well. So basically in this one, the heroine is a cheer captain and the hero is a hockey player. And so they end up having to fake date for reasons that you see kind of discovered throughout the story. This one, I will say there are some heavy content warnings. So definitely check it out on Goodreads if you need those content warnings, because it is definitely dealing with some heavier content. I really enjoyed this one. It just felt a little too long. Like it is a big chunky book. Like it's almost 500 pages. It's 480 pages. And I felt like it really didn't need to be. So that was kind of my main issue with the book. But otherwise, I really love Elle Kennedy's writing and her series and her stories and this like group of characters. I'm so excited for the next book in the series. So yeah, still definitely recommend. All right, next up is Honeycut by Sierra Simone. I love this whole series so much. It's actually my favorite Sierra Simone series that I've read. And so I've had such a good time with the series. This is a continuation, so you need to read Salt Kiss first before jumping into this book because the trilogy is going to follow the same couples. This is like an MFM. We'll see where it's going to go, but so far there are 3 people in this kind of relationship situation, and this is just the continuation of their story. So basically in here we have an arranged marriage set up between the heroine and one of the heroes. There's age gap there, and he is a lot older, and he owns this kind of like BDSM style of club. And then in here the other hero is the bodyguard for the BDSM type of owner hero, and also has to kind of be the bodyguard for the heroine. So we saw in Salt Kiss how the bodyguard in this whole relationship situationship, like he had a kind of relationship situationship with both of the characters kind of separately. And so this is kind of the continuation, and they're all kind of in the same place now at the same time on the same page. And so we're kind of seeing things still discovered between this like a complicated relationship and like seeing where things are going. I really love this one. Like I said, I just really have connected to this series. I love it so much. It is 5 stars for me. So yeah, definitely check out this series if you haven't yet. Start with Salt Kiss, and especially like Salt in the Wound is the prologue prequel. Highly recommend. All right, next up is Business Casual by BK Borison. So this is the 4th and final book in her Love Light Farm series. I love this entire series so much. They've all been 4 and 5 stars for me. So this book was a 5-star read for me as well. I just love the small town series to pieces. I love all of the characters. And here we have kind of a black cat heroine, golden retriever type of energy from the hero. And they're very much like opposite the track. So the heroine in here owns some tattoo shops, and she's trying to open a business in her kind of small hometown. And so at the beginning of the story, we see she's at the wedding for one of the couples in the series, and her sister is there and is like, hey, you need to like let loose. You're only worrying about your business and getting your tattoo shop up and running. Like let loose and have some fun for once in your life. So she decides, you know what, I will have some fun. And so right there on the dance floor, she ends up going and approaching the hero, who is one of her friend's brothers who is visiting for the wedding. And so he's always kind of flirted with her and asked her out, and she's always turned him down. And so she goes up to him this time and approaches him. So she's like, hey, you wanted to do something? Like, let's go do it. So he is like totally thrown off and taken aback, and he thinks she's joking. And he's like, oh my God, wait, what? Like this is happening? And so we kind of see things going from there. Like at first he says no, because he's like, I don't want just kind of a quick hookup. And so then he ends up being in town because he's going to take care of his sister's business while she's away on her honeymoon. And so he's around the heroine in town for a while. And so we kind of see their relationship evolving from there. I love this one so much. I love the characters. I love in here how the heroine was the one who wanted that kind of one night stand hookup situation, no strings attached. And the hero was like, no, I want so much more from you. I want everything from you. And so I just love this one, love this whole series to pieces. I am obsessed with BK Borison's books, and I cannot wait for her new books coming in 2025. So yeah, 5 stars. All right, next up is Play Along by Liz Tomforty. So this is the 4th book in her Windy City series. This book actually came out in July, but I waited until December to get to it. This was the last book on this list I actually had to read. And so my most recent read, and I love this book. It was 5 stars. I don't know why I waited so long to get to it. So if you've been like me and been putting it off, I highly recommend you get to it. It was so good. Like I said, this book is the 4th in her Windy City series, and it's just so good. They're all sports romances. This one in particular is a baseball romance. The hero is a baseball player, and the heroine actually works for the team as well. She's an athletic trainer and the only woman who works for the team. And so basically they end up getting drunkenly married in Vegas, and then they have to kind of pretend their intentions for the marriage were real and they can't annul it. So they have to kind of play along and force this fake kind of relationship, even though they are really married, because one of them could lose their job, they find out. And so they kind of go from there. I love the hero in here. Both of the characters have been featured throughout the series, and especially the hero. Like I was so excited to get to his book. He is very much a cinnamon roll hero, and he's been pining for the heroine for years. And I love the heroine in here and kind of her strength of her character, just seeing where she came from and her family relationships that were complicated, and seeing this found family she finds with the hero and his family and the whole baseball team. I loved it here as well. She's kind of figuring out what she wants to do with her next move for her career as well. It's just so good. Highly recommend this series. This is my 2nd favorite in the series now. The Right Move is still like top tier for me, but this book is one of my favorites as well. So yeah, 5 stars for Play Along. All right, next up is The Game Changer by Lana Ferguson. So this author actually had 2 releases this year. I read them both. I have read all of her releases. Love them so much. This one though is probably my least favorite of all of the 4 books that I've read. So this one I did give 4 stars to. So it's still a solid book. It's just not my favorite from her. One thing I love about this author is that she writes incorporates so many different tropes. She had a single dad nanny contemporary romance. She's had a werewolf shifter, a fake dating, alpha omega relationship. She has had now this hockey romance, kind of brothers, teammate, best friend situation. And then at the end of the year, she just had a Loch Ness monster. So kind of like a low angst, lower on the monster romance scale, but yeah, cute one as well. So on those lists, this one is at the bottom of the list for me. But like I said, it was 4 stars. I still really enjoyed it. It's just not my favorite from the author. So we see the hero in this one. He is a hockey player and he has a very public breakup. And so the PR of the team wants to kind of get some good press for him, for the team. So the heroine in here, her brother plays for the team as well. And so she has this kind of like a baking show and she's very much like a baking darling. So they're like, hey, maybe we can like merge things and have one of the hockey players go and help her out with her baking show and kind of get good press for both of us. And so it ends up being the hero. And so he is her brother's best friend and teammate. And it kind of goes from there. And there's like this mutual pining and crushing on each other. It is really cute and sweet. Just like I said, not my favorite from the author, but still so solid. Would recommend all of her books, honestly, depending on the trope that you want. And I'm so excited for new books from her in 2025. So yeah, 4 stars for me. Not 5 star, but like still so solid. All right, next up is Five Brothers by Penelope Douglas. I actually do have a copy of this book, but it is buried over there beneath some other books. So I didn't want to dig it out. This one I did give 3 stars to, so I didn't love it. And I had some thoughts on it. So let's see. So Penelope Douglas actually had 2 releases this year, and I should have put the other book on the list, Pirate Girls, because that one I did love. This one just wasn't a favorite for me. This one is kind of like a setup where a heroine ends up sleeping with somebody at the beginning of the story, and she had such a good time, and she wants to kind of figure out who this mystery person is that she slept with. And so it kind of involves these 5 brothers, 5 guys who are in her life, and she has to kind of figure out, or tries to figure out, like she has kind of situationships with kind of all of the guys, different connections with all of them, and she wants to figure out who that like mystery guy is, pretty much, that she got with at the beginning of the story. And so that's kind of the premise, and I just didn't love it. And I didn't love the heroine in this one either. I have read all of their books in the past, and so I love their books in general. This one just, I feel like it's been a while since I got into that mindset of kind of how their writing is, especially with the heroines, and so I just wasn't a fan of this one, and I just didn't really connect with anything, honestly. So yeah, it was a 3 stars for me, and I feel like that was kind of being nice, but it is what it is. All right, and then the last one on my list is The Wraith King by Juliet Cross. So this book was actually supposed to come out in January or February, and then it ended up getting pushed back until September. And so it did finally come out. This cover I'm still so obsessed with. I love this cover so much. Probably one of my favorite covers of the year. The book, though, sadly didn't work for me. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. So basically, this is a fantasy romance setup, and it's the first of a new series. So this one I had high hopes for, and it was just disappointing to me. I have read majority of Juliet Cross's backlist, or I should say I've read all of her like paranormal, Stay Spell series. I've read all of her small town romances. I've read a couple of her other like paranormal fantasy ones, and so I had high hopes for this one, and it was just sadly disappointing. That's not going to say that I'm not going to pick up her books again in the future, because I love her paranormal contemporary series. I love her small town, so maybe just like her fantasies aren't going to work for me, which is totally fine. Like not every book has to be for everybody. So yeah, this one I didn't love. This one I did like how we're following light and dark fae, and there's kind of this whole like prophecy quest, and the hero and heroine are kind of from opposing or rival kingdoms, so to speak. So I will say the first half of the story took a while for me to get into. The middle started to pick up once the like quest started to begin. I was a little bit more into the story. I just wanted a little bit more. Like I wanted a little bit more to the characters. I didn't really get their connection. I wanted a little bit more from the world, which I know it's the first in a series, so like maybe the world building will be coming. But again, I just had high hopes for it, and I'm really picky with like fantasy romances, so I don't know. This one just didn't work for me. So yeah, it was a 3-star read. All right, so those are all of my 20 5-star predictions I had for myself at the beginning of 2024 of new releases. So let's see. From that list, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 5-star reads. So 7 out of 20. I guess I did okay. Most of them though, if they weren't 5 stars, they were 4 stars. And there were like a couple 2, 3 stars in here, but not too bad. So I feel like I do know my reading pretty well. Some of these I feel like I was just kind of taking a chance with some new stuff that maybe favorite authors were doing. So that wasn't always a win for me, but otherwise I feel like I did pretty decent. And I had a lot of favorite reads in here from this list. So I definitely enjoyed kind of doing this. I'm definitely going to do it for 2025 as well, so that I can then react to them at the end of the year and see all of my thoughts and what I actually ended up giving the books. So this was a lot of fun. Definitely let me know in the comments if you read any of these as well, if you had any like 5-star predictions, most anticipated books that you read in 2024. Like let me know if you ended up actually loving those books as well. I would love it to know. And if you'd rather leave me an emoji in the comments today to let me know that you watched this video, leave me a star emoji. We have to go with a star since these were all of my 5-star predictions. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and thanks so much for watching. Bye!